We're supposed to be talking about, my dear sister Nina Turner and I, about this effort to come after members of Congress and others who are speaking out for a ceasefire. And the thing I just want to ground us in right now, and I know folks in this room understand this, but it's important that we keep it in mind, this is not new. This is not new. This is 75 plus years in the making. I was having a great conversation with John Nichols about Paul Finley and the history and all these things. There's so much history of AIPAC and now AIPAC and DMFI and others. I'm naming names, I'm not sorry, for coming after people who dare to stand authentically and consistently on the side of justice. And myself and my dear sister, we've got some experience with this.
Yeah, we have experience with that. We were talking about how the sun peeked in when Reverend started to talk. Did you all pick up on that? Well, you better go ahead on. Direct contact with the man upstairs. No, it was nice. Palestinian Jew is what our preacher was saying over there. Yes, Rania, definitely personal experience. So many of you may know that AIPAC put out a few weeks ago now that they were going to raise $100 million to go after Congress members who stand up for peace. There's no other way to explain it. That's what they're doing, standing up for peace. Asking for a ceasefire is in fact standing up for peace. Can you imagine $100 million? And some of you know, I've met quite a few of you in the room who said, hey, I live in Ohio, I voted for you, I lived in the district, or I supported you. This same effort, well, Ron, you know, I want to back up because you said this is not new. In my conversations with my dear sister, Santita Jackson, who I fondly call SJ, and she lifts me up on a regular basis, and she said the same groups or that same essence, the same spirit, the kind of same pursuit that went after you during your run. So many of you may or may not know, I ran for Congress for a special election in Ohio 11th District. 2021 was a special election because it was a vacated seat, and 2022 was the regular election cycle. But I want to go back to Santita. She said that same thrust came after my dad when he ran for president. In other words, Sister Senator is what she calls me. This ain't about you. As an individual, this is not about you. You may be bearing the brunt of it because of your courage and your conviction, but this is not about you. This has been going on for a long time. And I got to tell you, Rania, that grounded me. I want to share with folks at this summit, in the House of Push, Rainbow Coalition, things that I rarely talk about in public. I am going to write about it eventually. But when you get a call saying from a prominent Jewish leader who had been in support of you all my time when I was in Ohio Senate, we worked on projects and everything together. As soon as I started running for Congress, then the international tone took hold. In my Senate district, we have the largest number of Jewish people in Ohio live in the 25th Senate district where I represented. So I want you to picture that for years I was in service to my constituents of all walks of life, and it wasn't until I ran for Congress that it became a problem. I was told by this prominent Jewish leader, business leader, that he didn't recognize who I was and that I was going to become a member of the squad. Now here I am, I ain't even there. But now all of a sudden, I am going to be a member of the squad, and now that's a problem. And everything that certain people of this community, because I want you to track with me, I served my Jewish community, my black community, my Irish American community, name it, whoever, everybody, with dignity and distinction, and had not had a problem until I started running for Congress. This man called me up and said, I don't recognize you. Now, first of all, I am a free black woman in America. So number one, you don't call me and try to chastise me because you ain't my daddy. Okay, but I'm gonna put that in the parking lot, but I want y'all to know how I was feeling in that moment. And I'm looking at the phone, Rania, and I'm saying, well, it's elders in here. I was saying to myself, what did I do? Did I change? You know, what did I do to deserve this? Imagine that. So he went on, he said, you're gonna become a member of the squad. I'm getting emails, and you need to disavow the squad. And then he said, Palestinians have no rights that Israel must acknowledge. I'm gonna tell you something. It took everything I had. It took my grandmama, you know, the ancestors speaking to me, because this man was older than me, much older. And I said, I called on Black Jesus with the sandals on, Rev. That's the Jesus I called on, because that's the one I need when I'm about to cuss somebody out. It took everything that I had, Rania, everything that I had. You imagine any other person, you imagine them calling up a white man and saying that. I want you to imagine that. First of all, I had to disavow the squad. Many of those women are not only my colleagues, but some are my friends. And two, Palestinians have no rights that Israel must acknowledge. He said, if you don't do those, if you don't disavow the squad, we're gonna come at you with everything we got. I said, well, you better come on with everything you got.
Yes, yes.
And they did.
They sure did. I was there with you. And I want to say a couple of things. And actually, Reverend Hagler, who I just absolutely adore, I got to share a few moments with him earlier, and he reminded me of something that we know, but we don't necessarily speak or name very often, and that is that it's actually illegal to indiscriminately bomb civilians.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
So, like, that's a pretty baseline thing to understand, right? And as he was reminding me of this thing that we know, but don't speak, don't name, I was actually thinking about you, and I was thinking about 2021, that first special election. And again, it's not new. It's not new in 2021. It wasn't new a decade before that, or a decade before that, or today. But the thing I also want to name about these entities that are raising $100 million and have spent millions and billions of dollars and want you to disavow the squad, which, love them or hate them, that crew is standing for justice and equity. Whatever your thoughts, you're allowed to have your thoughts. They are standing for justice and equity. And for a white dude to call you and say disavow anybody, but especially a group of all women of color, disavow them. The other thing I just want to name, in your race, this was true, and I've never, y'all correct me if I'm wrong, but in every other race that they have played in, what they do is they run a bunch of ads, right? They run a bunch of television ads. They never once mention Israel or Palestine. Not once. The only time that they do that is with their donors.
And on that point, Rania, and I want to go back to Senator Sanders' race on this too. So they come very hard at Black people.
Yes.
Let me just say that, Black, peace-loving elected officials, and then others of color, and then they will come after some Jewish folks too. When Senator Sanders had his heart attack in 2020, the first ads that AIPAC ran against him, even though he's a Jew, more secular Jew, but he's a Jew, his parents, he has family members that perished in the Holocaust. None of that should, you don't have to put these qualifiers on him, but I'm just telling you part of the story. AIPAC ran ads against Senator John knows this, Alan knows this, Santita knows this, many people were close in that election, about his heart attack. Because he is Jewish, so they had to find something else. They did Andy Levin.
Yep.
A Jewish congressman, same thing. But they come the hardest after Black elected officials. I need my sisters and brothers from all walks of life to understand that.
Yeah.
And I need you to be able to say that. And what they will do when they come after Black electeds, they will use another Black person so that they can't be called anti-Black. I want you to hear me clearly.
Yep.
So, but there's a saying in the black community, you might be my color, but you're not my kind. It still does not mean that they're any less anti-black just because they got another black person willing to be a pawn.
Yep.
And Dr. Zogby knows this too. So your point, Rania, your point, and you cut me just whatever. This is personal to me, and I'm so glad we are having this session. We were together in the Sanders campaign. You were with me on my campaign. I want you all to know the pain. When October 7th hit, you know what Hamas did. We have said it over and over again. Those of us who believe in justice and peace will continue to say it. They were immoral. It was horrendous. It was wrong. It was illegal. It was all of those things. Now we are beyond a point, though, if we're ever going to get to peace and justice, we have got to have a permanent ceasefire to do it. I remember having a conversation with Dr. Zog when I was like, Doc, well, you know, these people keep talking about October 7th, and we should. Let me not minimize that. I don't mean it in that way. I mean, you can't use October 7th to justify the indiscriminate slaughter of civilians. That's what I mean by that. And Dr. Zogby said to me, he said, Nina, you know, it comes to a time that this is beyond self-defense at this point. You can't use the self-defense argument at this point. And so that is why it is important that we go out and elect and support. Now, elected leaders are not the only ones, but we got to marry activism with having somebody in offices who have the power, who will act on our behalf. And we are the ones to push them to do it. But you have got to have people in places of power to act on our behalf. That is why they did not want Sister Senator Nina Turner in the United States Congress, because they know I cannot be bought, I cannot be bossed, I cannot be sold. But what they did to get to me, Rania's point, they didn't use in public anti-Semitism. I'm not anti-Semite.
Of course not.
They didn't use that, though, because they knew that wouldn't play well in the Ohio 11th District. Santita, they used colorism, because I'm a chocolate black woman. They use colorism. Are y'all feeling me? We talk a lot about racism. We don't talk a lot about colorism. I am a chocolate black woman. They use colorism, and they use the fact that I would not be sufficiently loyal to the Democratic Party. Let me interpret that. I don't run, I don't hide, I don't jump, I don't shop. If Democrats are wrong, I'm gonna call them out.
Yep.
I was not sufficiently loyal.
Yes. Yes. And
wait, Rania, I'm sorry. Just one more point. So that's what they used in the district, because they knew that would play. They darkened my pictures. They did all kinds of things, because I want y'all to understand something. Colorism is real. And when you are of darker skin, and they use that because you don't meet the standards of white beauty to try to tear you down, and to have another black person willing to accept that. The other thing that they did, but internally, to Rania's point, they sent emails against me all over the country to raise money. Sam Bankman-Fried jumped in my race. Y'all hear me?
Yep.
They sent emails. I have emails because some of my Jewish allies who were in some of those meetings sent me the emails. They said, we must stop her. She supported Senator Bernie Sanders. She's going to be a member of the squad. She believes Palestinians should have rights. We must stop her. They sent that all over the country. And everywhere I go, I never know if there's a Jewish person who really believes that I'm an anti-Semite. The pain of that. Somebody like me who has stood up for justice all of my life. Can you imagine that? And then in my community, they use the not sufficiently loyal, and they use colorism. Oh, angry black woman. Let me just break that down. She's an angry black woman. I am, though. I'm mad as hell.
The trifecta.
You can join that club. Angry black women, we taking applications.
But this is, all of this is really important, because it brings us back to something that I think is also important as we're moving. It's 2024. It's an election year. And we're talking about members of Congress, and I want to name something else that's wildly important. Our elected officials, especially on the federal level, do not represent us. They're supposed to. They're supposed to work for us. And again, there are exceptions. There are exceptions, and we need to fight to protect those exceptions, because as you know intimately, and so many others, and I've lost clients because I dare be Palestinian and say that I'm Palestinian. There are consequences that a lot of people have suffered, and we have got, absolutely continue to suffer, and we have got to protect those members, and we have to identify who are those people in other districts. Where can we pick up seats? I'm gonna get a little tactical now because we have to, and this is what I'm an operative, right? That's kind of a grody word, but I am. We have to pick up seats. There are 36 open house seats this cycle. I'm not saying that every one of them is gonna be for us, but there are a lot of districts where the Democrat that wins that primary is going to win that seat. And we have to ask the questions, and we have to pay attention. Where is their money coming from? All of that is public information, except for the super PAC dark money, as we know. But we can still see what they're spending. We can see what AIPAC and DMFI and others are spending. We can see that. And I know we all have lives and families and work, and times are stressful. But please, please, please understand that those people are making decisions for all of us, and they work for us. They haven't been, and it's long past time that they do. So as we move into this season that we're in, these things don't happen by accident. And there's that saying, like, you know, elections have consequences. And listen, our system, and you and I have talked about this a lot. There's this saying, like, our system is broken. Our system's not broken. It's working just exactly fine for the people that it was created for. And we know this. We've lived it. You've lived it. We still are. So while I want to rework this system, I'm just being nice about it for a little bit. Right now, today, we have an opportunity to make sure that we are putting people in those seats who are listening to us, who are standing for humanity, who are standing for justice consistently. And it was said earlier, justice, you can't be progressive but for. You just can't. It's not real. You're posing, you're faking. And we just can't do that anymore. It's long past time. It's long, long past time. And every single person has a part to play. And I know sometimes it can be stressful. And I actually want you to speak to this too. It can feel like it can be anxiety inducing for some people if you've not been involved. And I get asked this question all the time. I know you do too. I don't know what to do. What can I do? I mean, aside from some of the obvious things, voting, relational organizing, bringing your folks out, do what you're good at. Do what you're good at. Everybody is good at something in this movement, and every single one of us need every one of you.
Yeah, that's true. You got to protect your mind, too. I mean, the things that you do for self-care are so important. Those of us who are on the battlefield, you got to refill your tank. And so whether that's meditation, getting a hug from somebody that you love, praying, dancing, whatever you do to just regenerate yourself, because being on a justice journey is extraordinarily hard, and it never ends. I mean, I liken it to the 440 relay. When I was in high school, I ran track, and I was the first leg of the 440 relay because I was fast. You put your fastest runner first because you're trying to gain a lead. I want you to liken the 440 relay to life. The only thing, the relay never ends. The first leg of the relay's job is to gain the lead. The second leg's job is to keep the lead and advance the lead. The third leg of the race got the same assignment as the second leg, is to keep the lead and advance the lead. And when the third leg passes the baton to the anchor leg's job is to keep the lead, advance the lead, and come across the finish line to win. In this justice journey, same thing, but we never stop running the relay race. We're passing the baton generation after generation. Each generation's job is to keep the lead and advance the lead. Unfortunately, in this moment, we are retrenching. We got to get back to even where we were. But don't get so discouraged that you want to be out of the game, because it is hard. I mean, I've had some nights, crying. saying, my God, you know, feeling kind of like Jesus a little bit, you know, because sometimes you do feel forsaken. Sometimes you feel like there's not a higher power. But I want you to know it is a higher power, and that higher power works through each and every one of us. So please, 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 no matter what you do not get weary in well-doing. And one of the reasons why Rania and I are sharing these stories, because it is important that we protect those members of Congress, not for them as individuals, but for us. Rania's point about we don't always have to agree with the people we support. There's a saying that if two people always agree, one is not needed. I mean, why the hell I need you? We always in agreement. We don't always have to be in agreement. But if you list a set of things that matter the most to you, and you can check off most of the time that person is with you, you don't have to agree with them all the time to protect them. We want to stand up time, talent, and treasure to help those members who are standing up for peace. And then we can fight with them on other issues when they get in there. Okay?
Absolutely.
But we need to protect those seats.
Yes, and we know because they've told us they're targeting members Rashida Tlaib, Ilhan Omar, Jamal Bowman, Summer Lee, and Cori Bush. And let me just be clear, there are many others. I mean, we had Representative Jackson here earlier. We had Representative Garcia, and you know, Delia Ramirez has been with us, and Mark Pocan and others who have just been like solidly with us. I'm not discounting that.
Well, let me not go there. I'm sorry. I'm just saying that because when I was going through my hell, especially in 2022, nobody was. When I say nobody, I mean not many electeds. Yes, there were organizations there. PDA was there, Progressive Democrats of America in the House, Jewish Voices of Peace. So many organizations were right by my side in my second run. But elected leaders were not, because they were scared.
Yeah.
And now they see the light because they see what they did to me. Matter of fact, they interviewed Rania about the strategy. AIPAC and DMFI said we're going to use the Ohio 11 strategy. They was proud about how they did me. And they said we're going to use this strategy all over the country to stop progressives. Yeah,
and that's what they're doing. That's exactly what they're doing. And I also will just pivot just slightly, if that's okay. I just want to also talk, because as we're thinking about November, we also have to think about why we're here, which is to demand a permanent ceasefire now, which is to demand that all hostages, that includes the political prisoners, the Palestinian political prisoners, be returned, which is to demand that aid be delivered, which is also to demand conditions to funding, which is, again, by the way, the law.
Look up the Leahy law. Look up the Leahy law. It's not new.
No.
This is the law of this country.
But as we're, you know, that's what we're here for. So I don't want to lose sight of November, but I also want to say there is still a lot of work to be done on the White House and in Congress. And
for March too, Ron, you don't think some of these members have primaries, so it's not just about November.
No, absolutely. Summer's primaries in April. So I mean, we've got there. It's coming. It's absolutely coming. That's a great point. And also, I want us to make sure that we leave here, and I know Jim's going to talk about this in a little bit too, but that we leave here understanding that our work is not just in November, it's not just in the primary, it's right now as we leave this building. It is as we move forward, is as we are in our communities. And it sounds like, you know, so silly, call your members of Congress. No, it's not. They're keeping tally. They are. And the excuses that I'm hearing in my meetings with the Senate and the House, and the senators and House members, is that their constituents believe X, Y, or Z. And so this is where I just want to name something for all of us to take forward with us, and that is, this country tends to not, the people in this country tend to not care about foreign policy until something happens. And it is incumbent upon us, with our own families and friends and communities and everybody that we work with, to help people understand that while the White House is telling us he can't forgive student loan debt, while they are telling us we cannot address the climate crisis, while they're telling us we can't have reparations, while they're telling us the epidemic of the unhoused in this country is not something we can deal with. We are sending billions upon billions upon billions of unchecked dollars, and by the way, circumventing Congress at the same time. This is happening right now, all while we're being told we cannot address the things that need to be addressed right here. So I just want to name that. So as you're out in your communities, call your members of Congress, please. And again, Jim, I'm sorry to step on what you're about to say next, but I have to say it out loud for my own mental well-being. Please, please do. Please do that. And again, back to the relational organizing. Tell your friends, tell your family. There really is strength in numbers.
Oh, you wanna? Oh. So, okay, all right. So, Reverend wants to make sure that we get a list of all of the congressional districts that are in play.
I've got that. Good news.
So
I got it.
We can get that. We'll definitely do that. One of the things that when you're talking about leadership that Reverend Jackson once said, he said leadership cannot just go along to get along. Leadership must meet the moral challenge of the day. All that indiscriminate killing, it's the moral challenge of today. And I want to say another point. This is about who's in office right now, not who was in office 4 years ago. Because we can talk about that person, and we will. But the bottom line is that that person is not in office right now. That person is not lording over genocide right now. And we can separate the two between understanding that that person is a neo-fascist to the core, but also understand what neoliberalism has done to breed neo-fascism. In other words, going to churches talking about the person who ain't in office when you should be doing your job right now while you're in office. These things are happening. We got to be able to separate the two and stop letting these Democrats come up in here and whisper sweet nothings in our ear while they do nothing, because they are in power. They were in power 2 years ago. They had every office, and we increased the minimum wage. They had every office, and the John Lewis Voting Rights Act did not pass. They had every office, and the Floyd Policing and Justice Act did not pass. They had every office. Every office. Leadership cannot just go along to get along. There comes a point when you see indiscriminate slaughter that you have got to stand up and say, not on my watch. Now, my mama loved her kids, but if we stepped out of line, she let us know. The same thing with an ally. You don't just, so what, Rania, we just gonna let every ally do whatever they want and still be by their side? Every ally gets to do indiscriminately kill people? You gotta let folks know what we stand for and what we don't stand for. And so far, we're letting people know what we stand for. So please don't let this administration off the hook. I don't want you to let any administration off the hook. But don't let this administration blame the past administration for what they not doing right now.
Absolutely, and we just have a couple seconds here left, and that's, earlier you talked about moral decay.
Oh yeah. 911, what's your emergency?
Yes.
Moral decay.
And we've been talking a lot over the last couple days about moral clarity. And I say this to anyone who will listen. I don't care what you call things. I really don't. Call it, I don't care, whatever. Call it a rainbow, a sunflower, I don't care. Call it whatever you want to call it. Can we just have some baseline agreements? Can we just agree that allowing babies to decay in their incubators is not okay? Can we just agree that bombing Yemen is not okay? Can we just agree that what's happening to Iranian women is not okay? Can we agree what's happening in Sudan and Congo is not okay? Can we just agree on these things and come together on that on behalf of humanity? No matter who you are, what you do, where you come from, what your religious preference or not, or whatever, can we just agree on that? And I'm just going to let you have the last word because it's going to be prophetic.
Well, Well, I mean, it's such an honor to be sitting side by side with Rania. And just this whole conference, you guys, there's so many people that I could shut out. But again, this is my last panel, and I just want to forever lift up the Reverend and Dr. Zogby for the vision that they had to bring all of us together. We can never forget. You know, my grandmother's 3 bones is something I've taken all over the country, so I'm sure Rania's not surprised, or SJ is not surprised, but I do want to leave you with some words from Grandma. And Rania and I talked a lot. I don't want you, we just want you to be informed, but I don't want you to be discouraged, so discouraged that you don't move. We're living in discouraging time, but I still want you to move. Move in your anger, move in your grief. You gotta move, because the other side, the other forces that don't wanna see peace, they gonna move regardless, so we gotta move. So Grandma, so my maternal grandmother born, you know, couldn't read or write, but she can count her money. She kept her money in the Southern Ladies Bank and Trust with a handkerchief. And my grandmother used to talk about the 3 bones, the wishbone, the jawbone, and the backbone. Now, I want you to take Grandma's 3 bones with you. The wishbone is for hoping and praying, Grandma said, because hope is the motivator, but the dream is the driver. The jawbone gives you courage to speak truth to power, to lift your voice, and each and every person in here has a voice. You don't have to have a fancy title to be the difference, to put a little extra on your ordinary. Titles are good, but purpose is better. We got a whole bunch of titled people who don't do anything. Titles are good, but purpose is better. But Grandma said the most important bone of them all, the supercalifragilistic expialidocious bone, baby, is the backbone, because the backbone will keep you standing through all of your trials and your tribulations. And in this life, we're gonna go through some stuff, but you can't have a testimony without a test. And we are being tested to determine whether or not we have courage and conviction and character enough to do what it is we know we need to do in our time. Permanent ceasefire for permanent peace, justice and security for Palestinians, justice and security for Israelis, and justice and security for the world.